Hey everyone, it's the Oxley Bomb MotoGP podcast with me, Matt Oxley, old racer, old journalist, and Peter Bomb, World Championship winning crew chief, award-winning journalist. And so what are we talking about today? We're not talking about MotoGP. Well, we kind of are in a roundabout way because we're talking about World Superbike. And obviously, MotoGP and World Superbike are brothers and sisters. They're owned by the same people. They sort of compete against each other. They used to, but they don't anymore because, they're now they were owned by Liberty. They're now both owned by the Motorsport and Entertainment Group. And so they're owned by Liberty and the Motorsport, MotoGP and Sports and Entertainment Group. That's such a mouthful, isn't it? God, MotoGP Sports and Entertainment Group. We're going to be talking about, because the big question that nobody's thought about quite yet is next year, we all know that 2027, new MotoGP rules, literally the biggest rules shake-up from how it's going to affect the motorcycles from their current spec since MotoGP began. Well, in fact, since Grand Prix racing began. When you think in 2002, when we went from 500cc to 990cc, all that changed was the capacity, the weight by a little bit, and the two strokes were banned. Not immediately, but very soon after. Whereas now we have multiple rule changes, aerodynamics, ride height devices, fuel, engine capacity, and also a change in tires as well. So this is the biggest change since the whole thing started way back in 1949. It's very significant. And obviously the idea is to slow the bikes down. They're getting too fast. They're going too fast on the straights, and actually they're going too fast around the corners. So they need to be slowed down. So that's the idea, to slow them down. But hang on a minute. If we're not careful, MotoGP is going to be slower than World Superbike, which obviously cannot be allowed to happen by Liberty because their premier series, which is MotoGP, would look ridiculous if it's like Formula One, which is MotoGP, being slower than the Touring Car Championship, which is World Superbike. The road-derived vehicles. So, what are the differences in lap times, and what are we going to do to, what are MotoGP going to do, what are Liberty going to do to slow the superbikes down if they need to? What's your idea on it, Peter?
So, man, where to start?
Yeah.
Where to start? Let's maybe start by the old debate, especially on social media, that superbikes are so much cheaper and can do almost the same or sometimes even better lap time than MotoGP. I mean, this discussion comes back all the time. Are they really faster, slower, or is there some more context to it? Obviously, there is a little bit more context. But yeah, there have been training sessions, usually in Jerez, where MotoGP test riders were on track, and World Superbike was on track, and it was quite interesting, the lap time wise. So yeah, that gives some question mark, but in reality, there is a whole different context behind the races where MotoGP bikes are active or the World Superbike is active. There is so much context that is missing if you just look at only the lap time. For example, the World Superbikes have shorter races. They have more fuel available. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is also that, as we all know, finding a couple of seconds is relatively easy when you're 10 seconds off the pace. But once you're inside 2 seconds of something, that's really, really hard. And imagine even the last 1 second. I'm not sure if I said it lately, but I'm going to say it again just to shock people off. If you take one of the better guys in Moto2, give him a good testing weekend on a MotoGP bike, put him on the racetrack with all the others, he is within 1/2 second, probably 1 second straight away. Yeah. And we all start to think he's brilliant. He's a lot better than we think. He deserves to be here. No, it's not that fucking complicated. It's only really, really difficult after that to make the last couple of tenths.
And every tenth is twice as hard to find as so you start chipping away and you're like, you go down from 1.5 seconds off the pace to 1.4 to 1.3 to 1.2, and once you get to 1 second, then it starts getting, 0.9 and then, to go from 0.9 to 0.6 off is like, whoa, that's a mountain to climb just for 2-3 tenths of a second.
But also a bit of context to say that they're not on the same type of tires, and they are even on different level of grip tire-wise logically. If a race is short, you can get away with softer rubber.
Sure.
And then World Superbikes have qualifying tires, which we don't have in MotoGP. So that already makes things a lot more.
Just what Peter was saying there that, about the fuel and Superbike races. We're not counting sprint races or Superpole races, the shorter races in both championships, but the longer races. The races are Superbike races are about 30% shorter than a MotoGP race, but they get 24% more fuel. You know, if you than a MotoGP bike, which is kind of crazy, but that's just the way it is. So they're burning an awful lot more fuel, and they don't have to make the tires last so long, so they can have a softer tire. And there's 7 tracks that are shared between the two championships at the moment. Phillip Island, Portimao, Assen, Misano, Balaton Park in Hungary, Aragon and Jerez. And I went through the lap records, and although, you know, it's race time, I have also some figures on race times, but it's lap records that people talk about inevitably.
Because that's fastest lap from the race.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what people...
Not Superpole or whatever.
Exactly. So I'm going to quickly whiz through the 7 tracks and the difference between MotoGP lap record and the World Superbike lap record. And it's kind of pretty interesting, really. Quite weird as well. Phillip Island, MotoGP bikes are 0.8 seconds faster than a Superbike. Portimao, MotoGP's 1.4 seconds faster than Superbikes. Assen, MotoGP is 1.7 seconds faster. That might have changed actually because we're recording this during the weekend of the Assen Superbike. So this is from last year's race times. Misano, 1.8 seconds faster. MotoGP bike's 1.8 seconds faster than a Superbike. Balaton, MotoGP bike is 1.6 seconds faster than a Superbike. Aragon, a MotoGP bike, is 0.1 seconds faster than the Superbike record. And there's some weird thing going on there because the Superbike, the MotoGP record is from 2022 when Luca Marini on a VR46 Ducati. I think, you know, the track's quite not in a great state at the moment. Is it quite dusty and all that kind of stuff? And then Jerez, the last one, a MotoGP bike is 1.1 seconds than a Superbike. That makes an average of 1.2 seconds faster, which isn't a lot. And that's what that's what we need to talk about. How are we going to how's Liberty or Motorsport Entertainment Group going to slow Superbikes down if necessary? And just quickly, if I can go on, Peter. Sorry.
I'm eager to jump in.
Just one thing, just do race times as well. This isn't fully up to date. This is something I worked out about just before COVID, I think, or maybe even during COVID when I had nothing better to do. I think I'm talking about 2019. So, you know, things won't have changed massively since then. If Jonathan Rea had ridden his Kawasaki ZX-10R in the 2019 Qatar MotoGP, he would have finished 49 seconds behind the MotoGP winner Andrea Dovizioso, putting him dead last, some way behind KTM rider Saarinen. That in 2019 or 2020, the Superbike riders also would have finished last. The Superbike winner would have finished last in Buriram, Losail, and Jerez. And I think there was one race, I think it was Aragon, again, because for some weird reason, there is Superbikes and MotoGP are super close at Aragon. If Alvaro Bautista, who won the Superbike race at Aragon back then, had raced in the MotoGP race that year, he would have finished 10th. But generally, the Superbike winner was sort of out of the points generally, or last, or whatever. So although they sound quite close on lap times, when you actually put, you know, on lap record, you put them in a race and it looks very different. You think, wow, they're so close. And then in a race, actually, they're not generally.
But when you compare the race times, you take the race length from the Superbike and have the MotoGP bike stop at that moment, or?
I work out the average lap time. So you take the race time, and divide it by the number of laps, and so that's as close as you can get to, you know. The weird one, Aragon, we need to dig a little bit deeper. That's suspiciously close. But for example, Phillip Island, it's for probably 70% down to the time of the year where we visited. When MotoGP comes, we're all having hoodies and jackets and waiting for the rain, and it's terribly cold. And when World Superbike is there, it's the best time of the year, which makes a huge difference. Yeah.
And MotoGP bikes on Phillip Island are notoriously it's very, very, very difficult to predict races in Phillip Island with a reason. You can almost not do one lap really full because you destroy the tire in 5 laps. So they're all just slowing down the pace. They want to be in the top 4 or 5, but then slowing down the pace until there's 2 laps to go, and then they open the top. Superbikes
save the tires.
Will say the same, but it's a difference. It's not as bad. It cannot be as bad.
Yeah. A few years ago, I interviewed Ichiro Yoda, a Kawasaki engineer who used to work in MotoGP, the Yamaha, and then Kawasaki. Very unusual for a Japanese engineer to swap brands. Really, he's one of the very few. And then I'm not sure whether he's still with the Kawasaki Superbike team, probably not. But I was interviewing him, and he'd just been testing at Barcelona, where Superbikes were at 1.6 seconds off the MotoGP pace. And he said the difference, he explained the difference this way. Horsepower and weight, he said, the difference in horsepower and weight, obviously a Superbike weighs a bit more, makes quite a bit less horsepower, was 0.75 seconds per lap. He said the seamless gearbox, which MotoGP has, World Superbike doesn't, is at 0.4 seconds a lap. Oh, wow. Freedom in chassis design and aerodynamics is 0.15, and tyres are 0.13. So, he's kind of dividing things up. Obviously, that's not everything. He's leaving out a few things. I mean, how do you think, let's say that Superbike, they do need to slow down Superbike. They're like, in a few months when MotoGP is testing and so on, let's say they do need to slow down Superbikes by, let's say, a second or 2. How are they going to do that?
Well, they have some.
If they need to do that with the technical regulations, how are they going to do that?
Well, they created a beautiful dashboard with a couple of buttons for the entertainment group organizers to turn to left and right when they want, which is especially. I mean, they started with the rev limit, which made sense. Then there is the weight thing to do, but at the moment they have this fuel consumption thing, which is actually an interesting tool to use, but it's used also a bit in a wrong way. It's not like if you get almost penalized when you're too good. Which feels a little bit wrong, but the reason, one of the reasons this thing made it, because it's easier to sell to the general public because it sounds very green. You go faster when your engine is able to run very, very lean, which in the end, if you're to make an engine run lean, is not only just about mapping and ignition timing. It's a lot about the materials, pistons, cylinder heads, and these materials. And that's a lot harder for a bigger company to put in place than it is for a smaller company.
But why is that important for the parts? Explain why. Okay,
well, if you want to use less fuel, at some point it starts to cost you really a lot of power. But before it starts to cost you really a lot of power, it will heat up everything in and around the combustion chamber a lot. And we are not used to that, so we didn't design the materials for that. Now, you have to design the materials and the coating from pistons and cylinder heads, valves and everything, even parts of the exhaust probably, your whole cooling system maybe, to accompany that. And then you use less fuel relative to the power you have, which is a nice target to give to manufacturers if you want to have them racing against each other. So that is a tool they have and they work with at the moment, but which we don't have in MotoGP. That's a big thing. That's one thing they have in the back of the room to always makes everything a little bit tighter for the manufacturers.
Yeah, I mean, World Superbike have been doing this for some years. I mean, it's basically kind of socialism in racing, isn't it? Basically, they have somebody there, like you say, with a button saying, well, I mean, they're surely going to be penalising the Ducati again shortly, aren't they? Because Bautista, as I speak, has won the last 12 races in a row, I think, on the Panigale V4R. So
Bulliga, you mean, obviously, yeah. Bautista still
sorry, who did I say?
Yeah, he's still Bautista, but it's Bulliga.
Oh, Bulliga, sorry.
But we had 3-4 Ducatis in a row yesterday. So,
exactly. But so the World Superbike have been doing this for a number of years. They have various ways. If somebody's if a certain make is too dominant, they reduce the fuel flow, they reduce the RPM, they add weight. So they've got. This basically comes from NASCAR racing in the States, but basically it's an entertainment thing. You don't want anybody to get too far ahead. If somebody's winning everything, this is not good for the sport. I mean, I don't care if somebody's winning everything. That's what racing's. If the manufacturer is the best manufacturer and the rider's the best rider, it's not their problem. It's the other people's problem to keep up. but it's not good for the show. It's not good for entertainment. So it's like, okay. And that's what I say. It's like socialism. It's like taxing the rich, basically, isn't it? You're too rich. You're too far ahead. We're gonna tax you. You're gonna have less fuel, fewer RPM, and we're gonna stick 2 kilos of lead on your bike.
To stay in this
and
comparison, it's like taxing the rich, but in some back room, the rich are telling you, well, we accept this, but if you do a little bit more, we leave your country. And then, so you tax them for the people, because that's how, because also it's easier for a small manufacturer that makes high exclusively, but very highly wanted sports bike to change the design from his pistons and his cylinder head. And it's less easy for a manufacturer that makes huge amounts of bikes to change something in the production process, especially when he doesn't sell any of these bikes anymore over the whole wide world, because we only make them for racing. An R1 is only made for racing. Nobody rides or buys an R1 over the whole world.
No.
So
it's crazy.
that is like, that's way. So but that's why
production.
That's why there is a little extra to the. I mean, actually, Matt, the rule book for World Superbike is probably 5 or 10 times than MotoGP. Because that is super, super complicated. And then it changes every now and then. So, you start with a bike that is in the showroom. And then within the rules, you are allowed to do a swing arm, maybe once in a year, and do this with some compression ratio. But then if you're a really silly manufacturer and you can't keep up, they give you the so-called super concessions, which is you have to know the weak point of your bike. And then you can ask for, I need a third swing arm, or I need another valve train, something that is really the weakest point on your maybe 15-year-old design engine. And then you are granted that. If you're, after a couple of months, still have no points, then you are granted the first super concession. Maybe you have the second one. So it gets really, really complicated with super concessions and so on. But they try to sort of, you can call it socialism, but to try to equalize it. I call it the greatest equalizer. But in the end, the manufacturer that can quickly react to everything, because the real regulations don't change so often, but the smaller manufacturer can make immediately a special limited edition from at least 2,000 of them with a special coating on the piston, and he's nice and legal again, and then and so on. So it's a race against each other, where at some point it gets a little bit silly, But if you, where Ducati is, for example, to name on the manufacturer, you don't want him to go, but you also, it's unexplainable to have every race 3-4 Ducatis in the top 5, or just all the podium is Ducatis. Which in the end, like you always say, it's everybody's problem except Ducati's problem. That's actually the target. So
I mean, it's horrible for the engineers. It's a horrible series to be in, really, isn't it? Because, as soon as you do a good job, somebody's coming and stamping on your head, basically.
And now this is the other thing. They have the MSMA also for Superbikes, which is sometimes the same people as in MotoGP, or sometimes it can be other people.
Yeah, you're talking about the Motorcycle Sports Manufacturers Association, which is the industry body that basically fights for their rights within these two championships. And
just like in MotoGP, they have to agree with the rules. They have to be unanimously agree. But then some of them are so much smarter than others, and they play games. If you're a big fan of one manufacturer, but the guy that is in MSMA is not the smartest guy, and then your bike is just not competitive on that level. The weird thing that I spoke to quite a few people so far in World Superbike Paddock from different positions and especially with different opinions, because that makes it really interesting. And nobody said it, but the feeling I got is like in the MSMA is probably too many people that are more that are focused on racing and on technology, and not enough from the marketing or production side. Because why we even work still with these bikes? We are working with bikes that become a little bit irrelevant at some point.
I mean, we're kind of straying off because we're talking. We love our tangents on this podcast, as everyone knows, and we're going off down a big, long superbike avenue, aren't we? And we need to drag it back and to the roundabout and go off down our MotoGP avenue again, bringing the superbikes with us. So I mean, let's say that Liberty, in October, November, holy shit, if we don't do something, the superbikes are going to be faster than MotoGP bikes next year. And that they cannot allow that to happen. just as in cars, somebody came out with some super touring car that was faster than a McLaren or a Williams Formula One car. They would have to do something to the rules. It has to be the fastest class. Otherwise, it has no point in existing. You know what I mean? It's literally everybody's like meant to be going like, wow, isn't MotoGP amazing? They're fastest motorbikes in the world. And if they're not, the game's up, basically.
Yeah.
So I assume they would have to deploy all those three, whack 5 kilos on them, take away 4 liters of fuel, and knock a couple of thousand RPM off the superbikes. That would do the job, wouldn't it? Yeah?
Yeah, but it's still marginal. We're looking for a bigger thing.
Sure. So the final thing, as everyone knows, if you listen to this podcast long enough, is tyres. And obviously, at the end of this year, MotoGP stops using Michelin tyres, which it's been using for 11 seasons, since 2016. MotoGP goes from Michelin to Pirelli, and Superbike goes from Pirelli to Michelin. Now, Superbike have always in Pirelli and Superbike have always had their concept of using their road production tyres as the base for their Superbike slicks, right? Which is a wonderful thing because it means there is a real direct link to what they're doing on the road and between the road and track, which is the whole kind of point of Superbike racing. But now Pirelli, they know that a Superbike tyre won't work on a MotoGP bike. The Superbikes are quite soft, the chassis are quite soft, the tyres are quite soft. They work together. MotoGP chassis are very stiff. You can't put a soft tyre on a soft construction tyre on a stiff chassis. It'll just destroy the tyre. So Pirelli, for the first time in their recent history, are designing proper racing tyres for MotoGP. Now, at the same time, Michelin are going from MotoGP to World Superbike. And I assumed that they would carry on using their MotoGP tyres. But just what I said, that, a soft bike with a stiff tyre won't work. It goes the other way as well. A stiff bike I'm getting confused here. But I mean, a road bike tyre won't work on a MotoGP tyre won't work on a Superbike. So Peter has a world exclusive. What's going on with Michelin?
No, not very exclusive, but yeah. I had 2 sources. One that is a team that tested the tires, or the official Michelin tires. Obviously, no names, and it was not very, very fast. They don't say it's a crap tire, but they say that's let's say more than 2 seconds, even 2.5 seconds is possible that they're slower than the current Pirelli. That's one thing. The other thing is when I interviewed Piero Toramaso from Michelin earlier this year, and asked a lot about this, he said, we're starting the development from the Superbike tires, not from the MotoGP tire. We start on our commercially available Superbike slicks and put our know-how and compounds and stuff on it. So the Pirellis will probably keep the same DNA, but the Michelins, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. And the Michelins will quite likely be enough slow to not upset the race results and the fans lap time wise next year. I expect the Superbikes to be a good step slower with these tires, and knowing Pirelli, they're not going to be slower than that. They really try hard. They will. It's a good chance that Pirelli will be a lot more successful in MotoGP than everybody was hoping they are. Meaning, the thing can have a big influence on lap times. When they designed the 2027 rule set, it was mostly done to go down with the lap times, with the speeds, because otherwise we can't go to the tracks that we love to go to.
Yeah.
We might end up with a very expensive exercise on a new engine, but maybe if you don't have the tire manufacturer on the same table, and if you don't dictate the tire manufacturer what to do, he might come with a surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean, eh? You get what I mean.
Sure. So yeah. I mean, what I know from Pirelli's in Superbike, obviously super high performing for a commercial street tire, a slick version of a commercial street tire, that they do tend to drop off a lot quicker than the Michelins, don't they? So that's the characteristic of them, that the Michelins, tend to be more consistent over a lap time. You know, there's a drop, but then it's generally reasonably consistent in lap times through the race. Whereas what I heard here, speaking to Superbike riders and people that work in Superbike, is that the Pirellis have a bigger drop off. So, you know, we don't know that. Well, we literally don't know how good or how bad any of these tires are going to be because they're both changing direction. Pirelli are going from racing road tires to racing race tires, and Michelin are going in the opposite direction from racing race tires to racing road tires. So, yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. But yeah, you might well be right that the tires are going to do the job for us. You know, and I think everybody in Superbike will be quite relieved if they don't have to start playing around with the motorcycles again.
One thing I also heard here from the guys that knows the tires quite well in the teams, they say that they are always surprised to hear about, they don't recognize anything of the problems that MotoGP riders have with the front tire pressure and temperature. That's
okay.
If they start, I don't even know the numbers, but something like if they start the front tire, if they want it to be on 2.1 during the race, and it comes back and it's 1.8 or it's 2.3, it doesn't feel it. It doesn't even feel it. If you go that far away from the ideal pressure on the Michelin, you don't even make it back to the pit lane. So this Pirelli is just not sensitive for these temperature and pressure related differences, which is a beautiful thing to hear. But they still have to prove that they can also make a MotoGP tire that is not very sensitive.
Yeah. I mean, when I spoke to Pirelli last year, they said they're going to start. I mean, I guess they're just covering themselves. Basically, they're going to start with the minimum tire pressure rule, which obviously everyone hates in MotoGP because we get situations like, suddenly riders, who was it? Pedro Acosta got nicked at Thailand, wasn't it? I think, I can't remember. Yeah. And so lost his podium. And this is just the worst way of going racing. You know, the guys cross the line and then an hour and a half later, the guy that finished third is fourth. You know, that's just, that is a disaster for anything because it just pisses people off.
And for the people that didn't always listen to us, the weird thing is that the tire just gets better for the rider. It just performs better if you drop the pressure. You drop it, you go faster. You drop it, you go faster. And none of the tires have failed so far. But it's a single supplier rule we have. So the tire manufacturer don't want any wrong advertisement. So he cuts the line where he thinks, and obviously he explained that they opened the tire and they show some damage and they did simulation, but we never had a problem with the front tire. And now it's even as bad in Moto2 as well. We had a rider disqualified. Was David Alonso, Moto2 last year? He lost his, I think it was a pole position or a front row position because being on the pressure too low because it simply performs better. That should not be the case with a proper tire. If a tire is really properly designed, it either gets worse when you go too low on the pressure, or it should not break. You know?
Sure.
That's really...
Yeah, but I mean, you know, the lower you go on pressure, the more the tire squishes and the bigger footprint you have. I mean, that's a basic...
No, not automatically. The footprint can change internally so much that it only has contact on the edges anymore, and then you lose the grip, and it can start to deform in a very funny way, which feels like your wheel is broken, and then you just don't go any faster anymore.
Yeah.
Not all the tires get better, but in a way, you're right. The really good tires usually gets a little bit better if you drop the front pressure some little more, Yeah.
And talking about how close Superbikes are to MotoGP on lap time, you know, the one thing we haven't really talked about, you know, we talked about, there's a difference in tires, there's a difference in weight, there's a difference in horsepower. You know, the number one reason why Superbikes are so close to MotoGP bikes is because they're fucking awesome. You know, you can go into your local motorbike dealer and buy an R1 or a Fireblade or a Panigale if you're super rich and come out and your bike is very nearly as good as a MotoGP bike, you know? I mean, you think of the difference between a Formula One car and a touring car, they're not even in the same game. Whereas a MotoGP bike and a Superbike are so, I mean, it's ridiculous the performance you can get just walking out of a dealer showroom. It's insane. Really.
That's the real shocker. Right? You buy a second-hand R1, you put an Öhlins shock in it and a cartridge set in the fork. You buy a couple of tires, and even if you can't use it, you have for silly money, you have a super amount of performance under your ass. By the time a car gets interesting, it costs $1 million. Otherwise, they're just boring. You know, not a motorbike.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah, and that's a kind of wonderful thing. And the reason for it, obviously, is that road bike design or superbike design has closely mirrored just follows MotoGP design. The sort of design improvements that MotoGP have made since, going back to the 70s, 80s. You think of the 80s where the beam aluminium chassis came onto road bikes. I think Yamaha were the first with their Delta box with the FZR 1000 and all that kind of stuff. That was now pretty much every road bike has a aluminium beam chassis, and just so many of the developments through suspension, through chassis, have come from MotoGP, and sort of the most obvious thing now is Superbikes have wings. And although some people laugh about them, I remember interviewing Peter Hickman, the TT rider, a few years ago, when BMW went from no wings on its M1000 to those big, the first set of wings, and he went testing at Cadwell, and the new fairing with the wings was a instant fit to the old setup. Literally, they decided what he'd do. He'd go out, do a session, do 15 minutes or whatever in one exit, come back in. They'd pop the top fairing off and put the new one on with the wings, and he'd go out again. So it was an exact back-to-back, at the same time. It took a couple of minutes to change, and off he went, and he was like completely blown away by the difference. He just said the motorcycle was completely different. So it didn't wheelie, because, that was the reason wings came in. So you can use more throttle, so you're faster down the straight. But what really blew his mind was how the bike turned. He just said the turning just improved dramatically, because you've just got that grip going into the corner. You've got that load on the front tire that you didn't have before, and it's just making that front tire grip. And if the front tire is gripping, you can turn harder, and then you can get on the throttle harder, sort of when it's still leaned over, because the downforce is stopping the front getting light. And as you're gassing it up out of a corner, once that front tire is not so strong on the asphalt, it's going to be running wide, and you're going to run off the track. So you can't open the throttle so hard. But with those wings, so it changed everything: braking, turning, first part of the exit, and the wheelies. It just changed the complete lap time. So although some people laugh when they see wings on road bikes, and you don't need them on the road, but they make a huge difference in Superbike, which is why everyone uses them pretty much.
Well, now the funny thing is, I'm every day now in the paddock here in Assen, in the World Superbike paddock, and it's. I noticed by myself that I do completely different to these bikes. When we're walking a MotoGP paddock, when I study MotoGP bikes, it's like this is a thing with two wheels and engine. We call it the MotoGP bike, and how it's working, And you think, if I look at these bikes, I'm relating it to road bikes. I still relate them to road bikes, because they appear like road bike. Obviously, under the skin is a little bit different. The wings I see usually from most of them, I have the impression they're just to bring some stability, to calm the front down a little bit, bring some stability. Yeah. And that's the main target. The funny thing is now, when I speak about road bikes and I speak about hobby racing bikes, when we look at the World Superbike paddock, there are some manufacturers that struggle, there are some manufacturers that dominates, and there's a couple of them in between. But it has no relationship. We started, or you said already in this podcast, you go to your dealer, you buy it, and you have like a proper performance bike, but it's still far away from what World Superbikes put on the track.
Sure.
It's a complicated way to explain it. I started to make it too difficult. What I want to say is that there is no relevance between the bikes that are successful in World Superbike and the bike that 99% of the people would better want to have if they go to a track.
Yeah.
I don't think the Ducati is a very easy and user-friendly bike if you buy it as fast as it, and you want to be fast with it on the track. But I know if you buy a Honda, which is probably at the moment the worst World Superbike in the World Superbike, worst performing Superbike team at the moment, already for years, Honda. If I need to advise somebody, if you start a team and buy a couple of bikes, start with a Honda, because it's so close to being very, very nice bike. If you want to have your own World Superbike team, maybe don't use a Honda. If you go for national championship and everything, or a hobby race, or whatever, just start with a Honda.
Yeah.
It's so much better than many other bikes, and many people think it is. But it doesn't have the reputation because it's not winning a World Superbike. But what I'm saying is that what's winning a World Superbike can be for other reasons as well.
Well, that's very much a Honda thing, isn't it? They can't, it's a road bike, so they're not like Ducati, who are like, we're just going to build a race bike and then put number plates
on it.
Exactly. And away you go. Honda, it's like, no, this is a road bike. We're going to make it a road bike. that can then be modified to take it super. I mean, that's why the Honda is so good in superstock racing, where you're allowed to do very, very little to the bike, and it's much more competitive in superstock than it is in Superbike. Obviously, super stock is much less tuning and add-ons and so on allowed than Superbike. The thing that and now we want to, what Peter mentioned, kind of marketing and all that kind of stuff. We want to get into what are Liberty going to do with World Superbike, because they've bought this championship, they bought MotoGP, and we've got the World Superbike as well. So what are they going to do? How are they going to change it? Are they going to change it? I mean, I've got my own ideas, and I think Peter's got his own ideas. I kind of think that I think the maximum road bike price for Superbike is insane. It's I think 45,000 euros, right? So that's about 39,000 pounds. I'm going to talk in pounds because that's my money, and I'm going to talk in pounds. And you can do your own exchange rate. So, I mean, I think that's insane. 39,000 pounds for a motorbike. I mean, sorry, to me that's not a motorbike. That's a rich man's Gucci bag, basically. If you're the kind of guy that's going out and buying that, you're probably not buying it as a proper motorbike. It's going to sit in your garage. You're going to show it to your friends, and you're going to take it for a few track days, maybe, and you're going to ride it down on a sunny Sunday to show off at the local pub or the local cafe or whatever. To me, that's not really what it should be about. Like you said earlier, Peter, no one really buys these bikes for the road anymore, and that's for various reasons. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was on a long ride out of London around the M25 and down into the country, down into the south coast. And I thought, I'm going to count the next 50 motorbikes I see, and I'm going to see
BMW, GS.
how exactly. See, I'm not counting 125s and scooters and stuff. I'm going to count the next 50 motorbikes and see how many Superbikes are in that.
Yeah.
So, they were nearly all adventure, naked, touring. I saw one Superbike in 50 motorcycles. I can remember back in the 90s in London, you go into London and all the motorbike parks would be full of Honda Fireblades, Ducati 916s and so on. And now you go and it's all, super scooters, nakeds, adventure and adventure bikes. And this is kind of what we want to get onto in a minute, but I'm just going to run you through the prices. So the upper limit for a Superbike, its price in the dealership, the upper limit is £39,000, right? The Panigale V4R, I think, costs about £38,000. I think the limit should be half that. I think it's an insane amount of money for a Superbike. When Honda launched its RC30 in 1988, and that was the first kind of homologation special built specifically for the first season of World Superbike in 1988. It cost £8,500, which with UK inflation now is £24,000, right? So it's pretty much, a V4R costs 60% more than what an RC30 cost in today's money. Which, funnily enough, is exactly what. So, an RC30 now would cost £24,000, which is exactly what a Fireblade SP would cost you, £24,000. A Yamaha R1M is £30,000, and a BMW M1000 RR is £33,000. Now, to me, I think the limit should be £24,000. What do you think, Peter? And that's probably 27, that's 26,000 euros. I mean, because it just seems mad to me that you can be asking Superbike riders to spend that much money,
Yeah, whether you're going to restrict it over the price cap or other technical regulations, they're losing a little bit of relevance. Why are we racing these things when nobody buys them? You hardly recognize a V4R because I never see a V4R in my life normally if I don't go to Lisman's track day. I don't know. Maybe it's also time to really change the Superbike regulations into almost make it like Super Sport, because then it's also, smaller engines and so on, or make it bikes that have more relevance to what you see on the road. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I just start to doubt the MSMA and the decision makers if there are actually enough good enough people on the same table when they do the meeting that have an eye on this championship from another perspective, from what are people actually riding on the road in this part of the world and that part of the world. I mean, we have baggers because somebody in America decided a couple of years ago, sort of a bagger racing makes sense, and I was laughing at it. But in America, a bagger is a relevant motorbike.
Yeah. So no, exactly.
It is. And baggers. Baggers actually, now I'm a little bit on a sideshow. Now it's MotoGP. I sort of accidentally watched the Austin race from the baggers, which I was trying to avoid because when I saw it before in Moto America, I didn't really like it at all. And when there's 8-9 bikes on the grid, I don't want to waste time there. But I don't say it was great, but it was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. And that was not because some part of the race, 2 guys were fighting for the lead. That just happens or doesn't happen. But the bikes look like race bikes, not because of the panniers.
It's amazing the lap times they do. Yeah.
The tires, I think they come from Dunlop, and it's a heavy motorbike, are amazing. Lots of lean angle, lots of slides, and it can stop and accelerate and move under the rider like a proper race bike. So I was really impressed by the backers. Positively surprised for that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Liberty now, you're looking at this, and they will do, because these are hard-nosed business people. You know, they're not motorbike people. They're hard-nosed business people. They're going to be looking at each championship.
If there's entertainment in your company name, we know.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about MotoGP and World Superbike now, you know, if you're Liberty, you're going, well, hang on, I've got 2 championships that are basically the same. And I know, you know, hardcore motorbikes will say, no, they're not the same at all. But to an outsider, you know, you've got MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3. You've got World Superbike, World Supersport, and World Sportbike, the new championship. You know, if you painted all the bikes black and put everybody in black leathers and helmets and everything and parachuted a Liberty guy into a racetrack and say, right, are you at a Superbike race now, or are you at a MotoGP race? Most people wouldn't have a fucking clue. And to me, if I was in charge, I'd be like, well, why have I got 2 products that are identical? What is the point of that? It
was completely logic in the past when Superbikes were relevant, and now they're not.
No. So that's the case of how do you make them relevant? And I've been saying for years, this is my personal view, that no one's buying Superbikes. The whole point of Superbike racing, where it came from, the whole point of it is to race what the people are buying, because that's what people want to do. They want to buy a motorbike and then go and watch it being some maniac doing stupid stuff on the motorbike around a racetrack. And if he's lucky, get into the paddock and have a look at these things. And, oh, look, what's he done to his bike? Oh, I'll do that to mine. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. And that's where it actually started in the States. Superbike racing started in the States in the mid-70s, where basically Yamaha ruled all the pure racing classes. You know, the 250 class the grid was full of Yamaha TZ 250s. The 350 class or 500 was full of Yamaha TZ 350s. The 750 class was full of Yamaha TZ 750s. I mean, literally every grid was full of identical bikes, and people started getting bored. And the first Superbike races in the States were generally Moto Guzzi twins, Ducati 900Ss, BMW R90 twins, and then the Japanese bikes started coming in, the Z1000 and the CB750, GS1000.
So what you're saying, they were relevant at the time.
No, exactly. They were completely relevant. And everybody, and they actually helped sales as well, because people saw these things and were like, wow, I want one of them. You know what I mean?
You're cool for relatively little money.
Exactly. So there was a symbiotic relationship between the people buying those bikes and either already having that bike and going to watch it being raced, or watching that bike being raced and think, oh, I want one of those, and going to the dealer on Monday morning, not necessarily because it won the race, but just because he liked the look of it or what the rider was doing, going to the dealer on Monday morning and buying the bike. That's the whole point of Superbike racing. There's meant to be a link between what people are buying on the road and what they're racing on the track. And now Superbike has completely lost that. Like I say, you just don't see motorcycling in most parts of the world is an aging demographic. And the roads are basically not the free places that they used to be. There's speed cameras everywhere. There's speed bumps everywhere.
It's a nice way of saying, yeah.
I mean, when we were kids, you could do anything you like pretty much on the road. And generally you'd get away with it, you know, because there were not enough policemen to chase after you. But now, what's the point of having a a superbike on the road, which can do nearly 200 miles an hour. There's speed cameras everywhere. There's speed bumps everywhere. You cannot ride like that anymore. The roads are busy. So and most motorbike people are in their 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They don't want to ride a superbike because it's super uncomfortable. So everyone has got a GS 1300, including Peter. And Steve Harris, you remember of Harris Frames? Mm-hmm. He summed up wonderful, one of the nicest people I've ever known in motorbike racing. Steve Harris, sadly no longer with us, who started Harris Performance Frames with his brother.
What a name, Some history there.
Yeah, and he said to me, this was 10, 20 years ago, he said to me, the thing is, when Harris started back in the 70s, every biker wanted to be Barry Sheen.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what they spent, the bikes they bought, the stuff they spent on the bikes. He said, now every biker wants to be Ewan McGregor. Obviously, Ewan McGregor, who single-handedly started the adventure bike revolution by riding around the world on a BMW GS. So, you go out on the roads now and everybody's got adventure bikes because they're comfortable, they're practical, they're completely fast enough. You can, if you know what you're doing on an adventure bike, you can ride pretty fast. So that's what I'm saying basically is I think World Superbike should have a naked class. It should have an adventure class. I think the French are always pretty hot on this kind of stuff. They already have an adventure championship in Spain, in France, and the bikes look awesome,
Yeah.
And I think that's just the way it needs to go. That it needs to reflect. It needs to reflect what people buy on the road, and B, it needs to stand apart from MotoGP.
Yeah, more than
it needs to look
now.
different.
Yeah.
It needs to look completely different. Because I sometimes watch World Superbike on telly, but not often because I watch MotoGP and I don't really, I watch an awful lot of MotoGP, so I don't necessarily want to watch motorbikes on my weekend off. But if it was naked, with big square plates that were back in the days of Wes Cooley and Kevin Schwantz when he started out, and everything looks completely different, I would watch that. I really would, because it would be, hey, this is something different. If you watch Superbike, it's basically MotoGP. They're going a second a lap slower. No difference at all. They're doing exactly the same things.
And it's, it's full of riders that didn't make it into MotoGP or that come back from MotoGP. It's completely yeah. Now, I love having these conversations, but I don't pretend that I have the best idea in the world. Things will shape themselves. I just have a lot of observations. First of all, from a fan point of view, especially now I see it again every day here in Assen. Yeah. As a fan, I will watch. I'm not sure if I would go to the racetrack and sit on the grandstand. I would want to watch it on a big screen at home and don't miss any action. I have immediately a replay, but I would want to go to the World Superbike event. There's not so many people. That means the paddock is open for everybody. And in the paddock is a huge show. They have the podium there. There is constant show. There are big screens there as well. You're really close to the trucks. You can have just the pit lane is off limits. So it's and it's different type of fans. They are more hardcore. So I love the atmosphere over there. That's really good. And I also love to see so many other manufacturers active in the sport bike and in the super sport class. This class is getting a little bit difficult to explain to the fan, but I think they get away with it. The younger fans, because you and me, we are the dinosaurs. And the younger new fans that we are aiming for don't really, obviously they know Ducati, but they don't really care about if it's a 2-cylinder, a 5-cylinder, has it a turbo or a supercharger. They don't really care. They want to have all the manufacturers fighting with each other. So ZX Moto is there. There is all types of bikes now, especially the sport class, and good fighting. So I have a good show there. And I see a different type of public. First, there's old school fans that like the atmosphere in the paddock, and they are allowed in the paddock without need to go to the bank first. And secondly, there is some fresh blood in there from other manufacturers. They change the classes, and like I said, from a technical point of view, it's a bit weird sometimes how they do the regulations with everything over the electronics. But the end result is we have all the manufacturers there fighting until the last lap. And not as long or as dangerous as a Supersport 300 used to be. We don't go again with 25 people to the last corner in Assen. It's at least 6, 7, 8 guys. Entertaining racing, new manufacturers in it. I love the show, actually. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the irony is that Superbike is actually well ahead of MotoGP in the way it markets itself at the event, like the Paddock show and everything. Yeah. This is what MotoGP is now starting to do, but by moving the sprint podium to somewhere where people can kind of be involved in it, and some tracks are actually really quite close to them, which is how it should be. I really think that MotoGP can learn from World Superbike in that area. To me, the only cool, the MotoGP paddock is a kind of holy grail. Everybody is desperate to get into the MotoGP paddock, but you go into the MotoGP, there's nothing there. It's just trucks. It's all the trucks, all shiny.
Lots of fancy people and fancy campers and fancy.
The shiniest trucks you've seen in your life. There's about 30 of them. All, if you like trucks,
all
it's a
the
good
tires
place
are
to go.
painted black every week again. All the wheels are polished.
So you've got all. Yeah, no, exactly. The truck drivers, they sit there all weekend. Most of them have got other jobs as well, but sort of polishing the tires and stuff like that. So you've got all the juggernauts. You've got all the hospitalities, but you won't see a motorbike. You will not see a motorbike. The best part of the MotoGP paddock is the section they have. Most tracks, they don't have enough garages for all the teams in all the classes, and this will get worse now that we're giving more garage space to MotoGP. That they're having a kind of the best part of the paddock at the moment is the tents, where if you're a lower Moto2, Moto3 team, you don't get to work in a garage. You work in a tent. That were built by Dorna or Liberty or whoever you want to say. And they work out of there. So fans can go up and watch the mechanics working on the bikes and starting the bikes and warming them up and all that kind of stuff. So that's the most interesting part of the paddock. The rest of it is literally trucks that you can't go into. If you're a fan, trucks that you can't go into, hospitalities that you can't go into unless you paid, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So I always say this to people, don't get so excited about being in the paddock. You might see a MotoGP whiz past on his electric scooter, sort of craftily dodging the autograph hunters so he can get to lunch on time. But, the MotoGP paddock now is an incredibly non-motorbike space, I would say. It's about trucks and hospitality units more than motorbikes, and I always find that really sad. I used to love paddocks in the old days where you'd spot somebody walking along in a bit of a daydream, looking at stuff, and then somebody just comes and starts a bike, running, push jumping a bike right behind them, and they're walking along, and suddenly this sort of bike fires into action, 3 feet behind them, and they nearly jump out their skin. There was all this kind of stuff. It was a slight sort of crazy kind of area, the paddock, but it isn't anymore. The other good thing about World Superbike is that it provides an extra arena for people to work in. And MotoGP is pretty small. It's MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3. That's not a huge world. If you can't get in there as a mechanic or a team boss or as a rider, that gives you a chance to go and, earn a living, and people go both ways. People either working in the garages or on the bikes go up to MotoGP and then come down to World Superbike. So it really has its use. I don't think Liberty will get rid of it because or sell it. But it's really interesting. When Liberty bought MotoGP last year, 2025, when they completed the acquisition, they published a full financial report of MotoGP, which I'd never seen before. And it's really interesting because, one of the first rules of journalism is follow the money. That's how you understand what's everything going on. Exactly. Now, MotoGP Dorna profits, I think, are around about £200,000 a year. 200 million pounds a year, right? And guess how much of that comes from MotoGP? 92% of that £200 million profit comes from MotoGP. The other 8% comes from World Superbike, Moto E, so it still existed at that time, and Road to MotoGP events. So, I would imagine maybe World Superbike is maybe 5-6% of Dorna Motorsport, MotoGP Sportsnet. I'm going to start calling it SMEG again because it's so much easier than saying MotoGP Sports and Entertainment Group. So, that's a pretty stark illustration of the balance between the two championships. The money that one brings in and the other brings in. Peter.
Yeah, they will be silly to sell it because then they create a competition, which now they have everything under control. I would love to see them making it more different than it is now. Now it's like we are almost as good as MotoGP. No, it's just a completely different championship. Go back to what you see in the paddock. The MotoGP is aiming to have a grid and a paddock where it's very, very important that you have pictures that you were there. Because that's how they made Formula 1 popular. Formula 1 didn't get any more exciting. It got popular because he invited celebrities to be there and show that they are there. Because Formula 1 was and is boring, but it's growing because you want to be there. So if you have that, if they succeed in MotoGP, good for them. But that leaves a vacuum, that leaves an open place for World Superbike for the people who actually know a thing about motorbikes, love motorbikes, and want to be closer to them. I really hope that's going to be, whatever they do with the class, that is the distinction that I think makes sense in the end.
Yeah. But like you say, close to them is super important. So, and if you want to be close to the bikes, I think this, again, Superbikes, you want that link between road bike sales and the racing and Superbike. They need to be a strong link.
A bike that at least when you look at it, you think you understand what it is.
Yeah.
With MotoGP, you don't. Sometimes you're not even sure if you look at the front or the rear wheel. This is all just prototype, Formula 1, aero, shits. There's lots of stuff over it. And it's really exciting technically, but World Superbike still is a motorbike.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that another reason they need to change World Superbike is because the lines between the two championships are becoming quite blurred. You think in MotoGP, we've got MotoGP, okay, full prototypes. Moto2, road bike engine. Moto3 soon will be a road bike engine. Baggers, they're road bikes, basically, even though they're, they're specially built. It's becoming a road bike series, and then you've got World Superbike, which is a road bike series. So if I was Liberty, I would say, right, no, we need to make some kind of proper distinction between the two and try and make, I mean, they both need to be even more fan friendly. I find it massively disappointing that the MotoGP paddock isn't a motorbike space anymore.
No.
I mean, literally, if you walked into a MotoGP paddock with your motorbike boots on and some leather jeans and a leather jacket and a helmet, you will, and you got long hair, you look a bit sort of like you're going to have security coming up like going, can I see your passport? Because you will stand out. And to me, that's really sad that a motorcyclist will stand out as the odd one out in a motorbike paddock. I mean, it fucking annoys the shit out of me. It really does, because it's not right. It's not a very motorbike friendly place, And if I was Liberty, I'd work on that as well, because it's tricky. But obviously, maybe they don't want motorcyclists; they want new people. It's the difference between.
Well, they're juggling. It's not easy in their position too, eh?
No.
It's not easy too. I see a lot more devoted fans here on the type of cars and bikes and the people I meet, to the people that walk in the paddock and where they look at it. It's a different public than MotoGP. They all, if you love World Superbike, you also love MotoGP. But not the other way around automatically.
Exactly.
There's a lot of new fans coming into MotoGP. I have no interest at all as World Superbike. That looks boring and simple. So it's a difference.
No, you're right. It's a balancing point. You've got to, I mean, Liberty, they divide their fans into two types. So you've got the purist, who are the motorbike people, like us and most World Superbike fans. And then you've got the tourists. You've got purists and tourists. And the tourists are the kind of new people that come along, the kind of, they want to have a look. They quite like it, but they're fans of MotoGP rather than motorcycling. They might be fans of Marc Marquez or Fabio Quartararo or whatever. They're that sort of fan, and that's fine. The more of them we get, the merrier. We don't care whether they're really into bikes or not. But the balance is keeping them happy and attracting them without pissing off the purists. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the changes over the last years to try and get tourists in have pissed off the purists, and so that's just a sort of tightrope that they have to walk and try not to go. You've got to try and please both groups of fans,
Yeah, look at Formula 1, how they burn their fingers hugely at the moment, listening to the wrong people and changing the rules, and now they're in the shit. They will come out of it.
Yeah.
But they underestimated the influence or what the majority of the fans like. They got away with murder because they sell boring races for a lot of years and then they were still growing. But they start to think we can do everything. But maybe they still, don't be surprised that there's still just the same amount of people turning up on the racetrack because you need to be there. But the races just got completely confusingly, dangerously boring at the moment. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how many for F1 races they had this year? One or two? I can't even remember. But obviously they had two cancelled because of the war in the Middle East. But I've watched a few of them, and it's basically what they've done in Formula One. They had a massive rules rewrite, and the biggest thing, they made the cars smaller, which is great, trying to make them better at overtaking. But they've also, the big thing they've done is made the power unit, the power train, is half internal combustion engine and half electric, and they have to recharge the batteries all the way through the race, and this has caused the most ridiculous speed differences.
Yeah.
You can have a car 20 meters behind another car at the start as they come onto the start-finish straight, and the guy behind us breezes past like it's a MotoGP bike.
Yeah, and even worse, it can be a brilliant strategy move from him for later in the race.
Sure.
But then you go. No, now they partly make it a game.
Exactly.
Where the strategy in the pit box and the strategy from the rider will probably, yes or not, turn out in the end. And in the meantime, we basically have no idea. And we see unlogic things. I think they went a step too far. Well, they went a lot too far for all the hardcore fans, but probably the new fans love it. I don't know. If more or less people start to watch Formula One, I just see a lot of outcry from the people who know Formula One for years. But that's probably not the future anymore. That's like you or me in MotoGP. I'm not hearing 15 years from now. That's for sure.
No. Exactly. I mean, it certainly made the racing really weird in Formula One. You're having, instead of just people following people around, suddenly this guy's overtaking two guys. You're like, what the fuck's going on here? And then a lap later, because he hasn't charged his battery in the right place, the other two guys come past, and it's like, whoa, this is almost exciting. Well, it kind of would be, but it's not real, is it? It's kind of. But if you're not a hardcore fan, if you haven't been following racing for a long time, you might think, oh, this is awesome. Yep. It's so exciting. You don't know what's going to happen next. It's completely unpredictable. So again, it's trying to balance the interest of the people that know, the purists, and the interest of the people who don't, who just want a bit of razzmatazz. Just balancing, trying to attract both those types of people isn't easy. Not easy at all.
We did a lot more marketing talk or trying to understand what people like and don't like than we expected to do. World Superbike.
Yeah, well,
you always end up here if you start the World Superbike and MotoGP discussion. You always end up in also having these discussions included.
Yeah, like I say, you have to follow the money, because this is how the decisions are made. Yeah. That it's the people in charge of Formula One, of Liberty now. They own all these things. Their only job is to make money. If the bikes look better going backwards, they'll make the bike goes backwards. I mean, it just they're here to make money, that's just the way the world is, and. We just hope that they make good decisions in the next few years.
Yeah, and get back to the real beginning of the podcast, Matt. When you say, will they be faster? Will they be slower? It's a very, very interesting time to try to follow closely what's happening. And for everybody that's a little bit new to this podcast, just follow the tires, because the tires will explain probably almost everything that we're going. They have so much interest, so much influence, and the tire is not decided by the organizer. Which in your country, in the BSB, is more or less. Yeah. I know Pirelli is the spec tire, but the type of tires is not in the hands of Pirelli. The type of tires is in Stewart's hands.
Yeah.
So
the spec of the
if
tires.
The organizer is in charge, because I think I said it already at least one time earlier in an older podcast. We need a Dorna tire when it's still done. We need the organizer is in charge of the tire, because it's unbelievably strange that the thing that has the most influence on the bike's performance is coming from a manufacturer that sits not on the table when we make rules. That's bullshit.
Yeah. No, of course it is. Of course it is. And I've always said that about Dorna. They don't seem to understand that the tyre is the most important thing. And how can they let somebody go off? They make all these rules to try and make the racing better and everything. And the most important person in the room actually isn't in the room. And they're gone off and doing something. It's like when Michelin brought in the 2024 tyre. It destroyed the racing. Yeah. You go back, compare the racing in 2023 to 2024, it was a different ball game. That tyre ruined the racing, really. It ruined the spectacle. It made the Ducatis a second a lap faster in most places, but generally, most of the other factories are still struggling to get to grips with that tyre now, So, the tyre is the most crucial thing. And of course, tyre spec and tyre design should be in the room, And what you're saying about BSB, so Stuart Higgs, the series director, he has all the specs available that Pirelli have, and he'll say, I think last year they were kind of getting a bit concerned with corner speeds. So obviously in BSB they raced a lot of that. Exactly, they race on a lot of quite old circuits with not a huge amount of runoff. So he said, right, well, we're just going to get the stickiest tire. That we're writing that out of the allocation. You can't use that. We want to bring down corner speeds. That's the kind of thing that should be happening in World Superbike.
It's embarrassingly simple.
No, exactly. And it's zero cost.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've talked about this so many times.
We talk so much about the tires again, but when we need to explain the MotoGP world, you can't get around the tires.
Well, you can't get around any motorsport. You know, tires are the number one, and it just boggles my mind that the people in charge don't seem to understand that. All right. Yeah, I think we're done, aren't we?
We're done. I'm back to the paddock now. This moment.
Okay, so yeah,
on Sunday afternoon in between.
Yeah,
I quickly went back to do the podcast.
Yeah, you need to rush back to Peter.
See them live.
Peter lives in Assen, so he's off to watch World Superbike. I watch it on TV, and I need to watch the end of the Le Mans 24 Hour as well. All right, everyone, thanks for listening, and we will be back. It's race week, finally. After it seems like we've had another kind of mini winter. So it seems like 3 weekends off since the States because of Qatar was postponed. But yeah, I can't wait to go to Jerez on Wednesday. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye-bye.